Kent State is the worst FBS football program in America. In today's video, we'll be covering Kent State's losing history, legends of the game who are alma maters there, why Kent State has been bad for so long, and how they can bounce back from such a horrific 100-year football program. My name's Dylan Register, and I tell football stories no one else tells on YouTube. The Kent State Golden Flashes have an all-time record of 321 wins, 507 losses, and have tied 28 games. The program has been around since 1920, and since that time, they have been to 4 bowl games, only winning 1 of them, and that is why they have been qualified as the #1 worst team in American college football.
Kent State takes over on downs, a couple of kneel downs away from the first bowl win in program history.
With that being said, it's time to get into the school history of this notoriously bad football program. The first attempt to establish a football team was in 1914, 1 year after the first classes were held on campus and 4 years after the school was founded in 1910. The team played 2 practice games against local high schools, but was discontinued by the athletic board and faculty to focus on the basketball season. While there was hope the team would return for the 1915 season, no team was established until 1920. The team played their first game October 30th, 1920 against Ashland College, a 6-0 loss under head coach Paul Chandler. Kent State would fail to score in their first 14 games, posting a record of 0-13-1. Somehow they were able to tie a game, not scoring any points, and this wouldn't be the last time it would happen. They wouldn't score their first points until 1923, finally putting points on the board in a 7-6 loss against West Liberty. During that 3-year losing streak, Kent State would suffer the worst loss in school history, a 118-0 loss to Baldwin Wallace College, which was also in 1923. Following the 7-6 loss to West Liberty, a new shutout streak began, which lasted 8 games, in which the Golden Flashes, then known as the Silver Foxes, went 0-6-2. That streak began with the second most lopsided loss in school history, an 82-0 loss to Slippery Rock. The streak finally ended with a 6-6 tie with the Indiana Normal School in 1925. Man, these names for these schools are super weird. That game preceded the Kent State football program's first win against West Liberty State. So it took Kent State 5 seasons to get their first win. That's just how awful the program was. Kent State posted their first winning season in 1928, going 4-2-2. Now we'll jump to 1931, where Kent State joined the Ohio Athletic Conference, playing in the OAC through the 1950 season except for the 1943 and 45 seasons, which were canceled due to the American involvement in World War II. Under Coach G. Darnold Starn, who coached Kent State from 1935 to 1942, the Flashes would begin to taste success, posting winning seasons in 1938, 1940, and 1942. During their time in the OAC, the Flashes never won a conference title. After World War II, Coach Trevor Rei coached the Flashes to their first era of consistent success. During his tenure, which lasted 18 seasons, the Flashes would post winning seasons in all but 5 of them, with the highlight of those 18 being a bowl appearance in a 1954 loss to the University of Delaware in the Refrigerator Bowl, losing 19-7. Rees retired as a head coach of Kent State after the 1963 season, ending his career as the winningest head coach of Kent State history. He would later be inducted to the Mid-Atlantic Conference Hall of Fame. He deserves a salute because, as you'll see in this video, this program is so trash. A man named Leo Strang was next up for the head coaching position and would lead them to 16 wins and 21 losses, not having one season with more than 5 wins. In 1967, he would resign and the next man up would do even worse with a 9-21 overall record in Dave Puddington's 3 seasons there. With a short-lived and bad coaching tenure at Kent State, Puddington is best known for being the head coach when the Kent State shootings happened in 1970, when the Ohio National Guard opened fire on a large group of university students, killing 4 and injuring 9. If you want more information about this topic, there is a very informative Mr. Beat video you should watch, and I'll have the link in the description. Puddington was fired after the 1970 season, and future legendary head coach Don James would take over for the Golden Flashes in 1971. Under Coach Don James is where we see the first notable notable players for Kent State, like Jack Lambert, one of the ugliest dudes the world has ever seen. I mean, this dude looks like he has a lisp when he talks. He looks like he would have trouble eating boiled peanuts. Even though he lagged in the looks department, he made up for it with his incredible athleticism, intelligence of the game, and toughness. He would cement his name as one of the most legendary linebackers of all time, starting with his epic career at Kent State, earning 593 tackles throughout his career. He was drafted by the Steelers in the second round and would help them win 4 Super Bowls. He even earned 8 Pro Bowls in a row, was named best linebacker of his era, and have his name enshrined as an NFL Hall of Famer. I had to pay my respects to one of the game's best, but now let's get back into the Don James era. I mentioned before that Don James would go on to be a legendary head coach. Well, to kickstart his head coaching career, he brought one of the most awful football programs of his time to a conference title, the first and the only conference title since. And he did it in 1972, the same year my 51-year-old father was born. The 1972 team would play in its second bowl game ever, but would lose to Tampa University 21-18. Also, Nick Saban played for Coach Don James as well, and he was even convinced to get into coaching because of him. If you're interested in that story, check out this video I did detailing Coach Saban's life story. Coach Don James would leave Kent State after the 1974 season to be the head coach at the University of Washington, and this is where he would establish his name as a legendary head coach. Following the departure of Don James, Kent State would go through a period marked with a ton of losses and regular coaching changes, not having any head coach be there for more than 3 seasons until 1997. To replace Don James, they promoted defensive coordinator Dennis Fitzgerald, who had 3 winning seasons but was hired somewhere else and left the team. Soon after the hire of Ron Blackledge, who was promoted from offensive coordinator, the program started to see a lot of losing seasons once again. And Ed Schellebeck, the next head coach, would bring back the team's first winless season since the 1920s. Coach Dick Cesnak was next up, except people really had their hopes up with his hire. He had experience coaching in the NFL, and he was an assistant for Coach Don James when Kent State won the conference championship in 1972.
It was very important to me to find out if the administration was interested in having a very successful football program. And in talking with President Schwartz and with Paul Amadeo, our athletic director, it was very obvious to me that that's the direction that they wanted to go.
But they wouldn't have to fire him because he passed away of a heart attack in April of that year. He was only 44 at the time, I think. Ohio State offensive coordinator Glenn Mason was hired as Kent State's next head coach in 1986. Kent posted 2 consecutive second-place MAC finishes, including a 7-4 overall mark in 1987, the Flash's first winning season since 1977. Following the 1987 season, Mason was hired by the Kansas Jayhawks. So they finally get a winning head coach, and just like that, he's gone after just 2 seasons. Kent State alumnus Nick Saban, the defense coordinator at Michigan State at the time, was a finalist to replace Mason, but he didn't get the position. Nick Saban would win the conference title with Toledo just 3 years later. Former North Carolina and head coach Dick Crum was hired to replace Mason. Despite high hopes for his tenure, Crum's Golden Flashes never put together a winning season in 3 years, compiling a record of 7-26, including a winless season in 1989, and he was fired the following season. From 1975 through 1990, there were 6 different head coaches, none being there longer than 3 seasons, with a combined record of 57 wins and 120 losses. To put that into perspective, Nick Saban has been a collegiate head coach for 26 years, and his loss total is about half of that of Kent State's from 1975 to 1990. Former Flashes standout and Canadian Football Hall of Famer Jim Corrigal began in 1994 and became the first head coach since Don James to coach more than 3 seasons, lasting only 4, having an overall record of 8-35-1. Dean Pease would be the next man up. He was hired in 1998 and suffered the team's most recent winless season, before leading the team to a slow recovery. In 2001, Kent State posted their first winning season since 1987, when they were led by quarterback Joshua Cripps and linebacker James Harrison, who led them to a 6-5 overall record. For Kent State, that's awesome. Josh Cripps was an NFL legend who is known as one of the best punt and kick returners of all time, with over 15,000 all-purpose yards, and he even made the decade team for the 2000s. He's also known for taking some of the hardest hits the NFL has ever seen. Many were by his former teammate, James Harrison.
I was talking to his mom. His mom smacked him in the head. Literally. Hard as I don't know what. Why you hit that boy? Like, that was your teammate, son. That's Josh.
James Harrison, on the other hand, went undrafted but would become the Defensive Player of the Year. He's a two-time Super Bowl winner, and he was just inducted into the Steelers Hall of Honor. Also, during that same time frame, Kent State basketball player Antonio Gates was there. Although he never played college football, he would go on to become one of the greatest tight ends of all time, spending his career with the Chargers. After the program improved to a winning season, Dean Pease took the defense coordinator job for the New England Patriots. He would go from coaching the worst football program of all time to coaching the defense of a team that just won the Super Bowl. And he ended up retiring from the NFL after 18 seasons, so it's safe to say it all worked out for him. Coach Doug Martin was promoted from offensive coordinator to fill the role. He would begin his head coaching tenure in 2004 and would resign in 2010. He had an overall record of 29-53. In Doug Martin's tenure at Kent State, he had Super Bowl MVP Patriots legend wide receiver Julian Edelman in at quarterback from 2006 to 2008. After one season playing for San Mateo Junior College, the one Division I offer he received was from Kent State. With that, he signed on and became a starter immediately. He earned the most single-season yards in school history with 3,190, etching his name as one of the most notable players in the program's history by being inducted into the Kent State Athletics Hall of Fame class of 2019. Once Martin resigned, Ohio State wide receivers coach Daryl Hazel was hired to replace him. In 2011, they even had to play against the number 2 team in the nation, the Nick Saban-led Alabama. In 2012, Daryl Hazel would coach the team to a historic feat, winning 8 games in a row, breaking the previous record of 5 wins in a row in 1940. They would also make history by beating a ranked opponent, the first time in program history, going 0-22 before that, and beat the 1973 team for the most wins in a season with 9. They would even get ranked as the number 25 team in the nation, the first time being ranked since 1973, when they were ranked 19 before losing the following game. They would be ranked as high as 17 in the nation. The 2012 Kent State team would go on to win 11 games, but lose the conference championship game and lose their bowl game. But in the conference championship game, they lost in overtime to Northern Illinois. They would finish 11-3, and their head coach would leave to be the head coach at Purdue. Every time a head coach is competent at their job for Kent State, he just gets hired away from the program. They don't know how to keep their coaches in the building and build a program that sustains itself over time. Paul Haynes was the next coach. Being a former player, the environment around him was excited to get going with a new coach. He would be the coach until 2017, going 14-45 in that time. How difficult is it to be good at this level of football? I mean, the MAC conference is literally the worst conference in football, and 9 times out of 10, every coaching hire Kent State makes, it's worse than the last. Kent State fans, how do you feel about watching your team play football? Sean Lewis would be the next head coach, and during his time, he actually won a bowl game, the first one in program history, winning 51-41 against Utah State. However, history would repeat itself, and Sean Lewis would get hired away to coach for Colorado with Deion Sanders, and Kenny Burns, who was previously coaching for Minnesota, was hired to fill his shoes, and they have not been filled at all. Kent State has been bad for so long due to their inability to hire competent head coaches who have a good staff built around them. They move on every 2 to 4 years in most cases throughout the school's history, and when they finally show a glimpse of success, the coach leaves the following season. All of the players gets thrown into a new coaching staff, a new play caller, a new system to learn, more people to have to build a strong relationship with throughout the year, and year in and year out this is happening, so no wonder why the program stinks. Once Kent State learns how to hire a good head coach, they must learn how to keep him happy enough to stick around the program so that success can become the standard. Better recruits will become interested, better coaches will inevitably get hired because it will be a sought-after coaching position, and things will go relatively smoothly. Thank you for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Like I've mentioned in this video, if you want to know more about Nick Saban and his life story, click this video you see on screen.